For most parents, it's unimaginable. The violent shaking of a child causing death or serious injury.
But if doctors are wrong in their diagnosis, the consequences for a parent can mean prison or even losing custody of your child. Tonight, the Fox 9 investigators are taking a deeper look at what's known as shaken baby syndrome.
You know, this should go without saying, but I'm going to say it anyway. No one should ever shake a child, an infant, a toddler under any condition. That said, there is an interesting controversy here. It is estimated more than 1,000 people have gone to prison for shaking a baby. But across the country, cases are being dismissed or overturned on appeal. Critics say shaken baby syndrome is being misdiagnosed based on a narrow set of criteria. Convictions based on science that's now being questioned. Declare a Tripp is a mother who's known her share of tough times, including homelessness and domestic violence. But she says it's never stopped her from protecting her 4 children.
What did they accuse you of doing?
Abusing him.
Then a year ago, Child Protection took her youngest, 9-month-old Zachary.
So I held him in my hands and I was like leaning on the wall, and I bent down and my sister Sierra was behind me, and I told her to go call 911, and I breathed in his mouth and rubbed on his chest, and he was like, ah!
The little boy was taken to Children's Hospital where doctors said he had bleeding on his brain and behind his eyes. They removed a portion of Zachary's skull to relieve the pressure. He now needs to wear this protective helmet. Doctors concluded he was the victim of abusive head trauma, the new term for shaken baby syndrome.
But I know it hurts, and I know what I know, which my son was not abused. And that's what I know. I know he was not left unattended for him to get abused. I know that.
She had fallen and hit her head on the end table, right next to our couch.
You didn't think that bump was that big a deal when it happened?
No, I didn't, or I would have took her to the doctor.
For Sherry and Rick Smith's daughter, Mariah, also 9 months old at the time, it began with a simple accident.
When do you find out that they're going to try to take Mariah from you?
Within 3 days.
Yeah. Within 3 days?
They were trying to terminate parental rights within 3 days.
Mariah was diagnosed by the very same doctor at Children's Hospital, who's part of the Midwest Children's Resource Center, where they diagnose cases of child abuse. The hospital and the center declined to comment for this story.
He said that she had that subdural hematoma and that he was going to have an eye specialist come in and look in her eyes.
To see if there was retinal hemorrhaging?
Yes.
Those are the classic symptoms used to diagnose shaken baby syndrome. Subdural hematoma, when blood fills the space between the brain and skull. Cerebral edema, swelling of the brain. And retinal hemorrhaging, bleeding in the back of the eye. When an infant or toddler with their larger head and weaker neck muscles is violently shaken, the theory goes, the rapid acceleration creates a whiplash effect, not unlike conditions observed in boxers or football players. The child's undeveloped brain rotates and pitches as it's slammed against the skull. Veins are torn, nerve cells destroyed, leading to bleeding and swelling. And yet outwardly, there may be no sign of injury.
If you don't need evidence of injury to accuse, then how do you defend yourself?
Dr. Janice Ophoven is a forensic pathologist, a scientist who determines the cause of death by examining the body.
And I get these cases and I'm like, where's the trauma?
Dr. Ophoven's part of a chorus of expert witnesses now convinced shaken baby syndrome is being misdiagnosed by pediatricians when there's no other sign of child abuse. Among them, Dr. Jan Liesma, a Chicago neuropathologist.
I've seen so many families disrupted, ruined, destroyed by what I consider to be false accusations.
And Dr. John Plunkett, a forensic pathologist in Minnesota, featured in a recent documentary debunking shaken baby syndrome.
Shaken baby syndrome was first developed as a theory 40 years ago, that infants with 3 specific signs or symptoms had injuries that were caused by violent shaking, and that nothing else could cause them.
All 3 experts say there's a variety of causes for those same 3 symptoms, even a premature birth or vitamin D deficiency, which DeClara believes is the case with her son. But in her case, the doctor told a judge that theory is not commonly accepted in the medical community.
A lot of kids can get subdural hematomas from trauma and from other reasons.
Biomechanics is adding to the skepticism. The Washington Post conducting an experiment with baby dummies and found a grown man shaking a 22-pound baby generated only 6 G's of force, while a short fall can generate more than 10 times the force of shaking alone.
In your medical opinion, have you ever seen a case where just shaking the child caused the fatal injury?
No,
Shaking alone?
no.
There's always been some kind of impact
Something else.
injury.
Something else.
Why aren't there neck injuries with shaken baby syndrome?
Well, that's the $64,000 question.
The problem is, once you're accused of shaken baby syndrome, it can be almost impossible to beat the rap. It's like proving a negative, proving that you didn't do something. But we're traveling to Thief River Falls today, about 5 hours from the Twin Cities, to meet a man who was able to do just that.
He flat out said this is shaken baby.
He said that to you?
He did.
Damian Marsden was home alone with his 4-month-old son, Rylan, when suddenly the toddler went limp.
The retinal bleeding, the subdural hematoma, and the doctor in the hospital told us that he had seen somebody seen an injury from 2 stories and not have the injuries that my son had.
Rylan died 6 days later, and Marsden was charged with murder.
And they're saying this is all fresh. It happened within 20 minutes.
But come to find out, Rylan had been dropped at daycare the week before. A pathologist testified the injury was old. A jury took only 2 hours to find Damian Marsden not guilty.
It was an absolute nightmare.
Go that way.
For nearly 3 years, Marsden had to live apart from his wife and 3 other children. They say police and social workers almost seemed intent on dividing the family.
After it was all said and done, I mean, I stuck by his side the whole time knowing he was innocent. And I think that was a lot. And then we decided after that, if we can make it through this ordeal, we can make it through everything.
It sounds like they also tried to turn you guys against each other.
They did. For a while, we even looked at each other. Because we didn't know.
It's the same story with the Smiths. Doctors at first accused Rick, but after he passed a lie detector test, police accused Sherry. Finally, after $15,000 in attorney fees and calling on expert witnesses, Child Protection quietly dropped the case.
Had we not had that money, we would have lost her. We would have never been able to prove we didn't do it.
I'm confused about how the court system can even go forward with this case with no facts.
DeClara Tripp doesn't have the money to hire attorneys or experts. For a year now, she's battled the label shaken baby syndrome as Child Protection tries to terminate her parental rights and take her son. A battle she's losing.
I want my child. My child deserves to be with me and his family.
There is a lot more skepticism about this diagnosis in Europe, but the American Academy of Pediatrics says there is no debate, that the science is settled, and the only controversy here is in the legal system and the media. Although it is worth noting that last year its medical journal, Pediatrics, carried a study that looked at expanding the diagnosis from 3 criteria to 6, including neck bruising. Guys, we have a link to that study and a whole lot of other information at the Fox 9 app. I think it's pretty interesting stuff we have there.
A lot of smart people looking at this. You have what the pediatricians are saying, but then you have what the medical examiners are saying.
Yeah, and they're really...
it seems to be 2 different stories.
I think that's perceptive. It really is. You know, the pediatricians believe one thing, that there is shaken baby syndrome, but we heard from a lot of forensic pathologists, and we talked to many more that were in that story, who believe that there is an issue here, that there is an overdiagnosis. Keep in mind, they're interested in different things. Pediatricians want to keep that child alive. Forensic pathologists want to find out why that child may have died.
It's going to take a lot more time and study to sort all
Absolutely.
of this out.
And that's hard because you don't want to do those with real babies, so you do them with dummies and animals, and that's an issue.
Not all that conclusive. All right,
Thanks, Tom.